The champagne flutes clinked with crystalline precision as I navigated the crowded deck of the Celestial Dream, my serving tray balanced with the kind of desperate steadiness that comes from knowing one wobble could cost me this gig. The superyacht's teak flooring gleamed beneath my sensible non-slip shoes, a stark contrast to the stilettos clicking past me, their wearers dripping in diamonds I could never afford to even window shop. Miami's humid night air clung to my uniform, making the black polyester stick to my skin as I smiled at another guest who plucked a glass from my tray without so much as acknowledging my existence. 4 hours into this shift, and I'd already memorized the hierarchy aboard this floating palace. The yacht's regular crew moved with practiced efficiency, their crisp whites marking them as permanent fixtures in this world of excess. We temps, hired just for tonight's exclusive event, wore all black like shadows meant to serve and disappear. I was grateful for the anonymity, for the ability to blend into the mahogany panels and observe without being observed. Every hour here meant another payment toward Lily's medical bills, another small victory against the crushing debt that had defined the last 2 years of our lives. The party sprawled across 3 decks of opulence that made my tiny apartment seem even more cramped in comparison. Up here on the main deck, Miami's glittering skyline provided a backdrop to conversations I couldn't quite hear over the jazz quartet playing near the stern. Below, I knew there was a formal dining area where the truly important guests would eventually retreat. And somewhere on the upper deck, in the exclusive VIP section cordoned off by velvet ropes and stone-faced security, the yacht's mysterious owner held court with his inner circle. I'd heard whispers about him throughout the evening. Dominic Castellano. The name carried weight even among the jaded crowd of Miami's elite. Some called him an importer with connections to every port from Hong Kong to Hamburg. Others lowered their voices when they mentioned his name, as if speaking too loudly might summon unwanted attention. The event coordinator had been explicit in her instructions to us temps. Serve the main deck guests only, never approach the VIP area, and absolutely never speak unless spoken to directly. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from Mrs. Chen, my neighbor who was watching Lily tonight. She's asking for you. Temp is 99. 2. Gave Tylenol. I typed back quickly with one hand while balancing the tray with the other. Kiss her goodnight for me. Home by midnight. The guilt settled in my chest like it always did when I worked these evening gigs, but Lily's next round of specialist appointments wouldn't pay for themselves. A sudden commotion near the yacht's stern made several guests turn their heads. Someone's champagne flute had shattered against the deck, and a server I recognized from the pre-shift briefing, Maria, crouched to collect the glittering shards with shaking hands. The woman who'd dropped it, dripping in emeralds that caught the deck lights, was already complaining loudly about the server's clumsiness, though I'd seen her gesticulate wildly with the glass moments before. I caught Maria's eye and gave her a quick, reassuring smile as I passed, remembering my own early disasters in this line of work. The jazz quartet transitioned into something slower, more intimate, and couples began pairing off near the railing where the ocean breeze provided relief from the humid night. I circulated with my tray, offering champagne and collecting empties, my mind half on my daughter's fever and half on maintaining the invisible efficiency this job required. The guests' conversations washed over me. A symphony of stock tips, vacation homes, and casual mentions of sums that would change my life, but barely registered in theirs. Then I heard it. A sound that cut through the jazz, the laughter, the clinking glasses. A baby's cry, high and distressed, coming from somewhere above us. My head snapped up instinctively, mother's radar immediately activated. The cry came again, more insistent, the kind of wail that spoke of genuine distress rather than simple fussiness. I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Several guests glanced upward toward the VIP deck with mild curiosity before returning to their conversations. But the crying continued, escalating into full-throated screams that made something clench in my chest. I set my tray on a nearby service table and moved toward the stairs leading to the upper deck before I'd consciously decided to do so. A uniformed crew member, young with nervous eyes, stood at the base of the stairs, blocking access. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The upper deck is restricted to invited guests only." "There's a baby crying up there," I said, though he could obviously hear it too. "I'm aware. Mr. Castellano's staff is handling it." The baby's screams intensified, and I heard what sounded like multiple adult voices, tense and urgent, but clearly not soothing the child. My hands clenched at my sides. This wasn't my business. I needed this job. I needed the money. Getting involved would almost certainly get me fired before the night was over. But the crying continued, and I thought of Lily at 2 months old, screaming with colic while I frantically tried everything to comfort her in our cramped apartment. I thought of every desperate night when nothing worked, when I felt like the world's worst mother, when I would have given anything for someone to just help. "They're not handling it very well," I said quietly. "I can hear that from here." The crew member's expression flickered with something that might have been agreement, but he shook his head. "My instructions are clear, ma'am. No one unauthorized goes up those stairs." I should have walked away, should have retrieved my tray and continued serving champagne to people who didn't see me, should have thought about Lily's medical bills and my own precarious financial situation. Instead, I watched a server I didn't recognize rush down the stairs, her face pale. She hurried toward what I assumed was the yacht's interior, and in that moment of distraction, I made a choice that would alter everything. I slipped past the crew member while his attention followed the departing server, taking the stairs 2 at a time before he could react. Behind me, I heard him call out, but I was already on the upper deck, following the sound of the inconsolable infant. The VIP area was smaller, more intimate than the main deck below. Leather seating areas, subtle lighting, and a level of privacy that explained why this section was so carefully guarded. And there, near the forward railing, a cluster of people stood in various states of helplessness around a high-end stroller. 2 men in dark suits that screamed security flanked the stroller, both looking entirely out of their depth. A woman in yacht crew uniform held the baby awkwardly, bouncing him with the mechanical rhythm of someone following instructions rather than instinct. The infant, maybe 8 months old, had a face red with rage and tears, his little fists flailing as he screamed his distress to anyone who would listen. And standing slightly apart, watching with an expression of controlled tension that didn't quite hide his concern, was a man who could only be Dominic Castellano. Even from a distance, he radiated a kind of presence that explained why people lowered their voices when they spoke his name. Tall and broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored navy suit, he stood with the stillness of someone accustomed to command, his dark eyes fixed on the crying child with an intensity that seemed to deepen with each passing second. His black hair was cut short, styled with precision, and a shadow of stubble defined a jawline that looked like it had been carved from stone. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s perhaps, with the kind of face that cameras loved and mothers warned their daughters about. "Give him the bottle again," he said, his voice carrying a faint accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, perhaps, or Spanish. The crew member awkwardly maneuvered a bottle toward the baby's mouth, but the child turned his face away, crying harder. "Mr. Castellano, perhaps we should call the pediatrician," one of the security men suggested, pulling out his phone. "Noah has no fever, no obvious injury," Dominic replied, though his hands clenched briefly at his sides. "He's just upset. There has to be a way to calm him." I'd approached without realizing it, drawn by the baby's distress. The crew member holding little Noah noticed me first, her eyes widening. "You're not supposed to be up here." All eyes turned to me, including Dominic Castellanos. His gaze was direct, assessing, the kind that seemed to catalog everything about a person in seconds. I should have been intimidated, should have apologized and retreated. Instead, I found myself speaking. "May I try? I have a daughter, 4 years old. I've dealt with this kind of crying before." The crew member looked to Dominic for instruction. For a long moment, he studied me with those dark eyes, and I felt weighed, measured, evaluated. The silence stretched, broken only by Noah's continued screaming. Then Dominic gave a single slight nod. The crew member handed Noah to me with visible relief. The baby was warm and solid in my arms, his little body rigid with distress. I adjusted my hold automatically, supporting his head with practiced ease, and began to sway in the gentle rocking motion that had soothed Lily through countless difficult nights. The movement was instinctive, born of thousands of hours spent comforting my own child. "Shh, little one," I murmured, keeping my voice low and soft. "You're okay. Everything's okay." I started humming, a melody I'd sung to Lily since she was born, one my own mother had sung to me. An old Spanish lullaby my grandmother taught us, simple and repetitive. Noah's screaming hitched, faltered. I kept humming, swaying, one hand gently patting his back in rhythm with the tune. The transition wasn't immediate. His cries came in waves, each one slightly less intense than the last. But gradually, over the span of perhaps 2 minutes that felt simultaneously endless and too brief, Noah's sobs quieted to hiccups, then to shuddering breaths. His tiny fist found its way to his mouth, and he began to suck on his fingers, his dark eyes, so much like his father's, watching me with infant curiosity. I became aware of the absolute silence around us. The security men stood frozen. The crew member's mouth hung slightly open, and Dominic Castellano stared at me with an expression I couldn't begin to interpret, something between amazement and calculation. "How did you do that?" he asked quietly. His voice was different now, less commanding and more genuinely curious. "Just practice," I replied, still swaying gently to keep Noah calm. "And this song my grandmother taught me. Some babies respond to certain rhythms. What's your name?" The question felt loaded with significance I didn't understand. "Hazel. Hazel Morrison." "And you work for the catering company?" "Just tonight. I'm temporary staff." Something shifted in his expression. "You have a child? You mentioned a daughter." I hesitated, unsure why this felt like dangerous territory. "Yes, Lily. She's 4. Noah made a small sound, not quite a cry, but a warning that he might start again. I resumed humming, and he settled back into my arms, his eyelids beginning to droop. The tension that had gripped his small body gradually released, and I felt him grow heavier as exhaustion claimed him. Around us, the sounds of the party below seemed distant, muted, as if we existed in a bubble separate from the rest of the yacht. "Mr. Castellano," one of the security men began, but Dominic raised a hand, silencing him without taking his eyes off me and Noah. "Are you married, Hazel Morrison? The father of your daughter, is he in the picture?" And the personal questions should have felt intrusive, inappropriate, but something in his tone suggested these weren't idle curiosity. "No to both. It's just Lily and me." He nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. "What do you do when you're not serving champagne on yachts?" "Whatever pays the bills," I answered honestly. "Retail, food service, office temp work, I'm flexible." "And your daughter? Who's watching her tonight?" "My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She's wonderful with Lily." Noah's breathing had deepened into the rhythmic pattern of sleep. I stood very still, not wanting to disturb him, aware that I was holding what was presumably one of the most powerful men in Miami's most precious possession. The intimacy of the moment felt surreal. Here I was, a broke single mother in a cheap uniform, cradling the sleeping son of a man whose wealth and influence I couldn't begin to fathom. Dominic moved closer, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne, something with notes of cedar and spice that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. He looked down at his sleeping son with an expression that transformed his face, softening the hard edges into something almost tender. "He's beautiful," I said quietly. "How old?" 8 months. Yesterday." There was something in his voice now, a note of pain quickly suppressed. "His mother passed away 3 months ago. Complications from childbirth that took time to manifest. By the time the doctors realized something was wrong, it was too late." The words hung between us, and suddenly so much made sense. The desperate attempts to calm the baby, the security team's helplessness, the way Dominic watched his son with fierce protectiveness tinged with fear. This was a man who could command empires, but was powerless in the face of infant tears and motherless grief. "I'm so sorry," I said, meaning it. "That's unbearable." "We manage. Noah has a nanny, of course, full-time staff, but she had a family emergency this weekend, and my usual backup was unavailable. I thought I could handle one evening with him here at the party." His mouth twisted in something that wasn't quite a smile. Clearly, I was mistaken. "Babies are unpredictable," I said gently. "Even with all the help in the world, sometimes they just need someone to hold them and convince them the world isn't ending." He studied me for a long moment. "Would you be willing to stay with Noah for the remainder of the evening? I have business matters to attend to below, but I'd feel more comfortable knowing someone capable was with him." The offer surprised me. "I was hired to work the party, Mr. Castellano. My supervisor will be looking for me." "I'll handle your supervisor. I own this yacht. If I say you're reassigned to childcare, that's the end of the discussion." There was no arrogance in his tone, just simple fact. This was a man accustomed to reshaping reality to suit his needs. I should have felt manipulated, controlled. Instead, I felt oddly relieved. Spending the rest of my shift with a sleeping baby would be infinitely preferable to navigating the demanding guests below. "All right," I agreed. "But I should tell my neighbor I'll be a bit later than expected. Use my phone." He pulled a sleek device from his pocket and held it out. "And Hazel? Thank you. For Noah, and for not running when he needed help." Our fingers brushed as I took the phone, and I felt an unexpected jolt, like static electricity but warmer. His eyes held mine for a beat too long, and I saw something there that made my pulse quicken. Not threat exactly, but intensity. Focus. The sense of being truly seen for the first time in longer than I could remember. I carefully shifted Noah's weight to one arm and dialed Mrs. Chen's number, updating her quickly, while Dominic spoke in low tones with his security team. When I handed back his phone, he gestured toward a cushioned seating area protected from the wind. "There's a bassinet in my stateroom," he said. "I'll have it brought up, along with everything else you might need. If Noah wakes, if there's any problem at all, these men will find me immediately." He addressed the security team. "Marcus, you stay up here. Anthony with me." And someone informed the event coordinator that Ms. Morrison is no longer available for service duties tonight. The efficiency with which he reorganized the evening around this new reality was impressive. Within minutes, I was settled into a comfortable chair, with sleeping Noah still cradled against my chest, a bassinet positioned nearby, and supplies that would put most nurseries to shame arranged within arm's reach. Dominic disappeared back down to the party, and I was left alone with the baby, the vast Miami skyline, and the unsettling feeling that my life had just shifted in ways I didn't yet understand. Noah slept peacefully for nearly an hour before stirring. I'd transferred him to the bassinet, but at his first whimper, I lifted him back into my arms, resuming the gentle swaying and humming that had worked before. He settled quickly, his small warm weight familiar in the way all babies become when you spend enough time holding them. I thought of Lily, hoped her fever had broken, wondered what she would think of tonight when I told her tomorrow. The party sounds below had quieted somewhat. The jazz quartet had switched to something instrumental and mellow. Footsteps on the stairs announced Dominic's return. He emerged from below carrying 2 plates of food and what looked like sparkling water in a crystal glass. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the plates on a nearby table. I didn't know your preferences, so I brought a selection. The food was clearly from the VIP menu, not the past appetizers I'd been serving earlier. Seared scallops, delicate risotto, fresh vegetables that probably cost more per serving than my usual dinners cost per week. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the consideration. You didn't have to do that. You're providing care for my son. The least I can do is ensure you're fed. He pulled up a chair near mine, close enough to see Noah but maintaining respectful distance. How has he been? Perfect. He stirred once but went right back down. I paused, then added, He really is beautiful. He has your eyes. Something vulnerable flickered across Dominic's face. He has his mother's smile, and her temperament, thank God. Much gentler than mine. We fell into conversation then, easier than I would have expected. He asked about Lily, about my work, about my life with genuine interest that seemed divorced from any ulterior motive. I found myself talking more freely than I had with anyone in months, maybe because the darkness and Noah's peaceful sleep created an intimacy that felt separate from our real lives. Or maybe because tomorrow I would return to invisibility, and this strange interlude would become a story I'd tell Lily when she was older. Why did you come up here? Dominic asked eventually. You knew you weren't supposed to be in the VIP area. You must have known it could cost you the job. I looked down at Noah, now sleeping in the bassinet, his little chest rising and falling with perfect rhythm. I heard him crying, and no one was helping. Or they were trying, but it wasn't working. And I struggled to articulate something I didn't fully understand myself. I couldn't walk away. I know what it's like to feel helpless when your child is hurting and you can't fix it. I couldn't leave him like that. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed, become softer, more contemplative. I have a proposition for you, Hazel Morrison. I'd like to offer you a position as Noah's nanny. The words hung in the air between us, and I was certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Noah needs consistent care. You clearly have natural ability with children, and more importantly, you responded to his distress when everyone else, including his own father, was failing. Dominic leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes intent on mine. My current situation isn't sustainable. I need someone I can trust, someone who puts Noah's well-being above everything else. Mr. Castellano, I'm flattered, but I'm not qualified. I don't have any formal training in childcare. I'm just a mother who's learned through trial and error with my own daughter. Trial and error is more valuable than any certificate when it comes to actual care, and the salary would be substantial. He named a figure that made my breath catch. It was more than I made in 3 months of cobbling together various jobs. In a year, it would cover Lily's medical debts completely, with enough left over to actually save for her future. I must have looked stunned, because Dominic continued, his voice taking on a note of urgency. I don't make offers like this lightly. I've had 6 nannies since Noah was born. All qualified, all with impeccable references. None of them lasted more than a month. They followed protocols, adhered to schedules, but they didn't connect with him. Not the way you did in a matter of minutes. 6 nannies in 8 months? I couldn't keep the concern from my voice. That's a lot of instability for an infant who just lost his mother. Something flickered in his expression, approval perhaps. Exactly. Which is why I need someone who will stay. Someone who sees him as a child first and a job second. I have Lily to consider. I can't just uproot her life. Bring her. Live-in position, private suite in my home, separate entrance if you prefer. I have resources. Whatever arrangements you need for your daughter, we can make them work. The offer was extraordinary, impossible, terrifying in its generosity. Men like Dominic Castellano didn't hand out opportunities like this without strings attached. I'd learned that much from my years navigating the edges of their world, serving their drinks, cleaning their offices, existing in their peripheral vision. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "This is a major decision." "Of course, take the weekend." "But Hazel?" His voice softened. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to trust yourself. You knew what Noah needed tonight when no one else did. That matters." The party wound down around midnight. Dominic arranged for a car to take me home, pressing a business card into my hand with his private number written on the back in bold script. "Call me Sunday evening with your decision. And please, think carefully about what's best for you and your daughter." The driver was professional and silent, dropping me at my apartment building with the kind of discretion that suggested he'd done this many times before. I climbed the stairs to my third-floor unit, mind spinning, and found Mrs. Chen dozing on my couch, Lily asleep in her bedroom. After paying Mrs. Chen and checking Lily's temperature, now back to normal, I collapsed into bed, still wearing the black uniform that smelled of expensive Yacht and baby powder. Saturday passed in a blur of routine. Lily's fever had broken completely, and we spent the day at the small park 3 blocks from our apartment. I pushed her on the swings, helped her navigate the jungle gym, and tried not to think about Dominic Castellano's offer. But it crept into my thoughts during every quiet moment. That salary, the stability, the chance to give Lily the kind of security I'd been chasing since she was born. Sunday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Ms. Morrison, this is Elena Garcia, Mr. Castellano's personal assistant. He asked me to reach out regarding the position we discussed Friday." "I haven't made a decision yet," I said, caught off guard. "Of course. Mr. Castellano wanted me to arrange a visit to the property so you could see the accommodations and meet the household staff. Would this afternoon work?" "I can send a car." I should have said no. Should have taken more time to think. Instead, I heard myself agreeing to a 2:00 pickup. After hanging up, I looked at Lily, who was drawing at our small kitchen table. "Baby, how would you feel about going to see a really big house today?" Her eyes lit up. "Like a castle?" "Maybe something like that." The car that arrived was a black Mercedes, sleek and expensive, but not ostentatious. The driver introduced himself as Anthony, the same security man I'd seen Friday night. He was polite with Lily, complimenting her princess dress and helping her with the seatbelt. We drove north along the coast, leaving the city behind for neighborhoods where the houses sat behind gates, and the ocean was a private amenity rather than public beach. Eventually, Anthony turned through wrought iron gates that opened automatically, following a palm-lined driveway to a Mediterranean-style villa that took my breath away. "Mommy, is this the castle?" Lily whispered, pressing her face to the window. "Something like that, sweetheart." Elena met us at the door, an elegant woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and a warm smile. "Welcome, Ms. Morrison, Lily. Mr. Castellano is with Noah in the nursery, but he asked me to show you the suite first." The villa was stunning without being cold. High ceilings, but furnished in warm woods and soft colors. Large windows overlooking manicured gardens and the ocean beyond. We followed Elena through hallways lined with tasteful art, past a formal living area and what looked like a professional office, to a wing that Elena explained was entirely private. "This would be yours," she said, opening double doors. The suite was larger than my entire apartment. A spacious living area with comfortable furniture, a full kitchen, 2 bedrooms each bigger than the single room Lily and I currently shared, and 2 bathrooms with fixtures that gleamed. The windows overlooked the gardens, and a private entrance led to a secluded courtyard. "The second bedroom could be Lily's," Elena continued. "Or we could set it up as a playroom and put her in one of the guest rooms down the hall if she'd prefer more space." Lily had already disappeared into what would be her bedroom, exclaiming over the window seat and built-in bookshelves. I stood in the living area, trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. Mr. Castellano wanted you to know that you'd have complete privacy, Elena said quietly. This suite has its own entrance, its own kitchen. You could live here and rarely see anyone else if that's what you preferred. Though, of course, you'd be welcome in the main house any time. This is too much, I murmured. Mr. Castellano is very invested in providing the best environment for Noah. That includes ensuring his caretaker is comfortable and content. We toured the rest of the relevant areas. The nursery was a dream, equipped with everything a baby could need and decorated in soothing blues and greens. Dominic was there when we arrived, Noah in his arms, both looking out the window at the ocean view. He turned when we entered, and I saw his expression soften when he saw Lily peeking from behind my legs. You must be Lily, he said, crouching to her level despite still holding Noah. I'm Dominic, and this is Noah. Lily studied them both with 4-year-old frankness. The baby's very small. He is. Would you like to see the playroom? Elena can show you while your mom and I talk. After Lily skipped off with Elena, chattering about the climbing structure she'd seen through the window, Dominic gestured for me to sit in one of the comfortable chairs near the window. He settled Noah in a nearby bassinet, the baby content and alert. What do you think? He asked simply. It's overwhelming. The suite alone is more space than Lily's ever had. That's not an answer to my question. I took a breath. I think you're offering me something that could change my daughter's entire life. I think the salary you mentioned would clear our debts and give us security I've never been able to provide. And I think I don't understand why you're being so generous to someone you met one time. You helped my son when he needed it. You put yourself at risk for a child you'd never met. That tells me something about your character. He paused. I've had investigators look into your background. The admission should have angered me, but I'd half expected it. Men like Dominic Castellano didn't make offers like this without due diligence. And what did they find? Single mother, working multiple jobs to cover medical expenses for a daughter with a chronic autoimmune condition. No criminal record, not even a traffic ticket. References from every employer describing you as reliable, hardworking, honest. A woman doing everything right in a system designed to keep people like you struggling. People like me? People without family wealth or connections. People playing by rules that were written to benefit others. His voice held an edge of something that might have been anger, but not directed at me. I respect that you've managed as well as you have, but you shouldn't have to work 3 jobs to afford basic medical care for your child. And you're offering to fix that out of the goodness of your heart? I'm offering you a job, one that benefits us both. I get consistent, quality care for Noah. You get stability and resources for Lily. It's a business arrangement. Is it? I challenged, surprised by my own boldness. Because business arrangements don't usually include villa suites and carte blanche for family. Something that might have been respect flickered in his dark eyes. You're right to be suspicious. In my world, nothing comes without strings. But in this case, the strings are simple. Take excellent care of my son, stay as long as he needs you, and allow me to ensure you and your daughter are properly compensated for disrupting your lives. What exactly do you do, Mr. Castellano? For work, I mean. I'm an importer. Goods from various international markets, distributed through established networks. The answer was smooth, practiced, revealing nothing. I thought of the whispers I'd heard at the party, the way people's voices changed when they mentioned his name. What kind of goods? Luxury items primarily, electronics, designer goods, specialty products that are difficult to source through traditional channels. It was a non-answer, and we both knew it. But I also knew I wasn't entitled to the truth. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if I was simply an employee hired to care for his child. If I accept this position, I said carefully, I need certain conditions. Name them. Lily's medical care takes priority. If she needs me, I need to be able to leave Noah with someone else temporarily. Agreed. I'll have backup staff for those situations. I want a contract. Clear terms, clear expectations, clear compensation. My attorney can have something drawn up by tomorrow. And if it doesn't work out, if Noah and I don't connect the way you think we will, I want 3 months severance to find other employment. 6 months, he countered. If it doesn't work, I don't want you scrambling to make rent while job hunting. The generosity unsettled me more than suspicion would have. I studied his face, trying to read the truth beneath the careful control. Why do I get the feeling there's something you're not telling me? Dominic's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. There are aspects of my life that don't concern you. Business matters that won't touch Noah, or by extension, you. Your role is simple. Care for my son. Everything else is separate. And if those separate things become not so separate, they won't. I'm very careful about maintaining boundaries. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this was simply a wealthy single father hiring help. But my instincts, honed by years of navigating the margins of privilege, whispered warnings I couldn't quite articulate. I need to see Lily's reaction, I said finally. If she's uncomfortable here, if this doesn't feel right for her, I can't accept. Of course. Take a few days, spend time here, see how Lily adapts. I'm not looking for an immediate answer. But we both knew I'd already made my decision the moment I saw that suite, calculated what the salary would mean for Lily's future. The question wasn't whether I'd accept, but whether I could live with myself for doing so, despite the unanswered questions and unspoken warnings. Elena returned with Lily, who was chattering excitedly about the playroom and the gardens and the pool she'd seen. "Mommy, can we stay? Please? There's a princess bed in one of the rooms, and Elena said we could put my stuffed animals on it." I looked at my daughter's shining face, then at Noah content in his bassinet, then at Dominic watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Yes, baby," I heard myself say. "I think we can stay." The smile that crossed Dominic's face was genuine, transforming his features into something approaching warmth. "Welcome to the family, Hazel Morrison." The word family hung in the air, carrying weight I didn't yet understand. But I'd made my choice, for better or worse. Tomorrow I'd resign from my other jobs, give notice on our apartment, and begin packing up our small life for transplant into this world of wealth and secrets. I just hoped I'd made the right decision. 3 months had passed since Lily and I moved into Dominic's villa, and the rhythm of our new life had become almost comfortable. Almost. Because there were still moments when I'd catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the hidden strings to suddenly pull taut and reveal the true cost of all this generosity. Noah had thrived under consistent care. The crying episodes that had plagued his early months diminished as we established routines that worked for him. He was crawling now, pulling himself up on furniture, babbling consonant sounds that weren't quite words but were clearly trying to be. Watching him develop, knowing I'd played a role in his security and happiness, filled me with purpose I hadn't felt in years. Lily had transformed too. Her autoimmune flares had decreased dramatically since we'd moved in. The stress of our previous life, the constant worry about money and housing and medical bills, had apparently been affecting her more than I'd realized. Here, with regular meals, stable housing, and access to the best medical care money could buy, she bloomed. The dark circles under her eyes faded. Her energy returned. She laughed more. Elena had become an unexpected friend, teaching me the household rhythms and introducing me to the small staff who maintained the villa. Maria, who handled cleaning, was from Guatemala and had a daughter Lily's age. Roberto, the groundskeeper, left fresh flowers in vases twice a week and maintained a small vegetable garden that Lily loved to visit. Even Anthony, who I now understood was much more than a driver, had proven kind despite the edge of danger that clung to him like cologne. What I hadn't expected was how my relationship with Dominic would evolve. Our early interactions had been purely professional, discussions about Noah's schedule and development, nothing personal. But gradually, boundaries blurred. He'd join us for Noah's bedtime routine. Share dinner with Lily and me in the kitchen, rather than eating alone in the formal dining room. Linger over coffee in the morning while I prepared Noah's breakfast. The change had been so gradual I hadn't noticed it happening until one evening, when I looked up from reading to the children, and found him watching me with an expression that made heat pool in my stomach. Not the detached appreciation of an employer observing competent work, but something far more complicated. "What?" I'd asked, suddenly self-conscious in my simple cotton dress. "You're good at this," he'd said quietly, being their safe place. The statement had felt weighted with meaning I didn't fully grasp, but I'd pushed it aside, focusing instead on the children's bedtime needs. Later, alone in my suite, I'd examined that moment from every angle, trying to understand what I'd seen in his eyes. Attraction? Loneliness? Simple gratitude? Whatever it was, I felt it too. That was the truly dangerous part. Dominic Castellano was objectively attractive, but I'd been around attractive men before without feeling this pull. It was the moments of vulnerability he let slip that undid me. The way his voice roughened when he talked about Noah's mother. The fierce protectiveness in his eyes when he held his son. The careful consideration he showed Lily, never overwhelming her but always showing interest in her drawings, her stories, her small triumphs. I was falling for my employer, and it was the stupidest thing I could possibly do. Tonight, Lily was having a sleepover at Maria's house with her daughter Sophia, a carefully arranged event that both girls had been excited about for weeks. Noah was already asleep, his monitor positioned on my nightstand. I'd planned to use the rare, quiet evening to catch up on reading, maybe take a long bath, enjoy the luxury of uninterrupted time. Instead, I found myself restless, wandering through the suite that still sometimes felt too large. Eventually, I gravitated toward the private courtyard, stepping out into the warm Miami evening. The sound of the ocean provided gentle white noise, and the gardens beyond were lit with subtle landscape lighting that turned the space into something magical. Couldn't sleep either. I turned to find Dominic in the courtyard, sitting on one of the stone benches with what looked like whiskey in a crystal glass. He'd changed from his usual business attire into dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. "Just enjoying the quiet," I said, suddenly aware that I was wearing only a thin nightgown and robe. I didn't realize this courtyard connected to the main house. It doesn't, usually, but I have a gate key. He gestured to the bench beside him. "Join me?" I should have made an excuse, retreated to my suite. Instead, I found myself settling onto the bench, leaving careful space between us. The stone was still warm from the day's sun, and the night air carried the scent of jasmine from the nearby bushes. "How was your day?" I asked, defaulting to the safe territory of polite conversation. "Long. Complicated. The kind that makes me question certain life choices." He took a sip of his drink. "How was yours?" "Good. Noah said mama today. Well, ma, but close enough." Something complex crossed Dominic's face. "Did he?" Too late. I realized my mistake. "I'm sorry. I should have said caregiver or my name or something. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize." His voice was rough. "Sophia was mama. It's natural that Noah would use the same word for the primary woman in his life. She would have wanted him to have that, someone to call by that name." The pain in his voice made my chest ache. "Tell me about her. Sophia. You never talk about her." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "We met at university. She was studying art history, had this ability to see beauty in everything. When she got pregnant, we were both terrified. Neither of us had planned on children, but once the shock wore off, she was radiant with joy. His hands tightened on the glass. The pregnancy was difficult. High blood pressure, complications that required bed rest, but she fought through all of it because she wanted Noah so badly. And then, when it should have been over, when she should have been recovering. "You don't have to talk about it," I said softly. "Postpartum cardiomyopathy. The doctors said it's rare, hard to predict. By the time they realized her heart was failing, it was too late for treatment. She held Noah once after he was born, told me she loved us both, and then she was gone." I reached out without thinking, covering his hand with mine. "I'm so sorry. That's unbearable." His fingers turned, capturing mine, and suddenly we were holding hands in the darkness, the simple touch crackling with unspoken tension. Some days I'm angry at her for leaving. How stupid is that? Angry at a dead woman for dying. It's not stupid. It's grief. It's human. And other days, I'm angry at myself for not seeing it coming, for not doing more, for not being able to save her. His thumb traced patterns on my palm, the touch absent-minded but electric. And then there are days when I look at Noah and see her smile, and I'm grateful even though it hurts. We sat in silence for a while, hands still joined, the weight of shared sorrow creating intimacy I hadn't expected. Eventually Dominic spoke again, his voice different now, more guarded. "There are things about my life you don't know, Hazel. Things I've kept separate from Noah, from you, from this house. But they exist, and eventually, they may touch you whether I want them to or not." "Like what?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "The business I mentioned. It's not entirely legal. Import regulations exist for reasons, and I often work around them. The goods themselves aren't harmful, mostly luxury items people want but can't easily access through legitimate channels, but the methods required to move them across borders." He trailed off. "Let's just say I have connections in places that make some people uncomfortable." "Are you telling me you're a criminal?" "I'm telling you I operate in gray areas. I don't hurt people, don't deal in anything that causes direct harm. But I also don't play by rules I consider arbitrary or corrupt." He turned to face me fully. "If that changes your opinion of me, I understand. But I needed you to know before." "Before what?" His free hand came up to cup my face, his dark eyes searching mine. "Before I do something I can't take back." The kiss happened so slowly, I could have stopped it. Should have stopped it. But I didn't want to. His lips were soft against mine, questioning rather than demanding. And when I didn't pull away, he deepened the contact with a low sound that vibrated through my chest. My hands found his shoulders, solid and warm under the thin cotton, and I kissed him back with a hunger that had been building for months. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against mine. "This is a terrible idea." "The worst," I agreed, but I didn't move away. "You work for me. There's a power imbalance. If this goes wrong, it affects Noah, affects Lily." "I know. We should stop. Right now. Pretend this didn't happen. We should." Neither of us moved. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered at the touch. "I haven't wanted anyone since Sophia died. Didn't think I could. And then you walked onto my yacht, broke protocol to help my crying son, and turned my entire world sideways." "I'm not her," I whispered. "No. You're entirely yourself. That's what scares me." This time when we kissed, there was no hesitation. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I went willingly, climbing into his lap in a way that would have scandalized me if I'd stopped to think about it. But thinking was beyond me, lost in the feel of him, solid and real, and wanting me with an intensity that matched my own need. His hands found the tie of my robe, and I felt the silk slide away. Through the thin nightgown, His touch burned, mapping curves with reverent attention. I tugged at his shirt, needing skin contact, and he broke the kiss long enough to pull it over his head. Then his mouth was on my throat, my collarbone, the swell of my breast through cotton that suddenly felt like a frustrating barrier. "Hazel," he breathed against my skin. "We need to stop or move somewhere more private." Reality crashed back. We were in the courtyard, visible to anyone who might look out a window. I pulled back, suddenly aware of how I must look, disheveled and wanting in his lap. This is crazy. Completely. But his hand stayed on my waist, keeping me close. "Tell me to leave. Tell me this can't happen." I wanted to. Wanted to be sensible and responsible and think about all the complications this would create. Instead, I heard myself say, "Stay." The word hung between us, invitation and surrender and terrible decision all rolled into one syllable. Dominic's eyes darkened, and I saw the last of his restraint fracture. "Your sweet or mine?" "Mine. It's closer." He stood with me still in his arms, carrying me through the courtyard gate and into my living area, with the ease of someone used to physical control. The door had barely closed behind us before we were kissing again, stumbling toward the bedroom, leaving a trail of clothing. Later, tangled in sheets still warm from our bodies, I traced patterns on his chest and tried to make sense of what we'd just done. Dominic's arms tightened around me, and I felt his lips press against my hair. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. I should have had dozens. This would complicate everything, blur every professional boundary, create risks for both our children. Instead, I found myself saying, "Not yet." "Good." His hand splayed across my stomach, possessive and warm. "Because I don't intend for this to be a one-time mistake. I want you, Hazel, not just tonight. I want to explore whatever this is between us. I'm still your employee. Then I'll hire a different nanny for Noah, keep you on as something else. That's not a solution. He's attached to me now. Then we'll figure it out as we go, but I'm not giving this up, not unless you want me to." I rolled over to face him, studying his features in the dim light filtering through the curtains. What if it doesn't work? What if we try this and it falls apart? What if it does work? What if this is the beginning of something neither of us saw coming? The optimism in his voice surprised me. This didn't seem like a man who looked at the world through rose-colored glasses. But maybe that's what grief and loneliness did to you. Made you grab onto hope when it finally appeared. "We take it slow," I said finally. "No dramatic changes. No telling the children anything until we're sure. And if it stops working, we end it cleanly before it affects Noah or Lily." "Agreed." He sealed the promise with a kiss that threatened to ignite round 2. "Though I should warn you, I'm not good at slow. Learn." But I was already pulling him closer, already feeling my resolve weaken. We didn't manage slow. Over the following weeks, what started as secret stolen moments became something deeper, more consuming. Dominic would find excuses to be wherever I was. His hand would brush mine during Noah's bedtime routine. We'd exchange looks across the dinner table that made my skin flush. And at night, when both children were asleep, he'd slip into my suite, or I'd find my way to his, and we'd lose ourselves in each other with the desperate intensity of people who knew this couldn't last, but refused to let go. The changes didn't go unnoticed. Elena gave me knowing looks that I couldn't quite interpret. Maria made comments about how happy Señor Castellano seemed lately. Even Anthony, usually stoic as stone, smiled when he saw Dominic and me together. But I pushed aside the worry. The voice that whispered this was all too good to be true. For the first time in years, I was happy. Lily was healthy. Noah was thriving. And Dominic looked at me like I was precious, like I mattered beyond my utility. I should have known better. Should have remembered that fairy tales don't happen to women like me. Should have paid more attention to the cars that sometimes idled outside the gates, to the calls Dominic took in hushed, urgent tones, to the tension that occasionally tightened his shoulders when he thought no one was watching. Should have remembered that in the world Dominic inhabited, happiness was temporary, and payment always came due. 6 months into our arrangement, I woke to find myself violently sick for the 3rd morning in a row. Dominic found me in the bathroom, holding my hair back while I retched into the toilet with humiliating intensity. "That's it," he said firmly once the wave passed. "I'm calling Dr. Martinez." "It's probably just a stomach bug," I protested weakly. Lily had one last week. But even as I said it, I knew. Some part of me had known for days, but had been in denial, unwilling to face the magnitude of what this meant. The nausea, the exhaustion, the tenderness in my breasts I'd attributed to my cycle. Dr. Martinez confirmed it that afternoon with a blood test that felt like a formality. "Congratulations, Ms. Morrison. You're approximately 8 weeks pregnant." The room tilted. 8 weeks. That meant. I counted backward frantically. The night in the courtyard. Our first time together. Of course. Of course that's when it happened, because the universe had a sense of humor. Dominic sat beside me, his hand finding mine automatically. "Hazel, are you all right?" "I don't know." The honesty escaped before I could filter it. "I don't know what I am." Dr. Martinez excused herself diplomatically, leaving us alone in the exam room. Dominic turned to face me fully, his expression carefully neutral in a way that told me he was anything but calm. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said quietly. "I'm thinking this is terrible timing. I'm thinking Lily's finally stable, Noah's thriving, we have a routine that works, and now everything's about to change again." "Is that all?" I met his eyes. "I'm thinking you've been down this road before. Pregnancy, childbirth, loss. And I'm terrified of what this might do to you, having to face all that again." Something cracked in his careful control. "You're worried about me?" "Of course I'm worried about you. Sophia's death nearly destroyed you. What if something goes wrong? What if—" "Stop." His hands cupped my face, forcing me to look at him. "Nothing is going to happen to you. I won't let it. We'll have the best doctors, constant monitoring, every precaution medical science can provide. You can't control everything, Dominic. You couldn't save her." The pain that flashed across his face made me regret the words instantly, but he didn't pull away. "No, I couldn't. But I learned from that nightmare. I know what warning signs to watch for now. I know how to be vigilant." His thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "And this time, I'm not a terrified graduate student trying to navigate the system alone. I have resources, connections, power. I will keep you safe." "What if I can't do this?" The fear poured out of me in a rush. I barely managed with Lily, and I was younger then, stronger. Now I'm almost 30 with a 4-year-old and a job, and you're not alone this time. His voice was fierce, certain. "You have me. You have help. You have everything you need. And Hazel?" He waited until I met his eyes. "I love you." The words hung in the air between us. The first time either of us had said them aloud despite months of showing it in countless small ways. "You don't have to say that just because—" "I'm not saying it because of the pregnancy. I've been in love with you since you sang that lullaby to Noah on the yacht. Maybe before. Maybe the moment you decided helping a crying baby was more important than keeping your job." His smile was tender, vulnerable. "This baby is a gift, not a burden. One I didn't know I wanted until this moment." "I'm terrified," I whispered. "So am I. But we'll be terrified together." We told Lily that evening, explaining in simple terms she could understand that she was going to be a big sister. Her reaction was immediate and enthusiastic, already planning all the things she'd teach the baby. Noah, oblivious at 9 months old, babbled happily through dinner, occasionally reaching for me with a new word. Mama. The word still caught at my heart every time he said it. I wasn't his mother, would never replace Sophia, but I'd become the primary maternal figure in his young life. And now I'd be mother to his sibling, tying our families together in ways I was still processing. Over the following weeks, Dominic transformed into a force of protective vigilance. Prenatal appointments were scheduled with the city's top obstetrician, a woman who'd handled high-risk pregnancies and understood the trauma behind Dominic's intensity. A nutritionist appeared to plan meals optimized for pregnancy. My supplement routine became more complex than Lily's medication schedule. This is excessive, I protested after the third specialist appointment in a week. This is necessary, Dominic countered. I'm not taking chances with your health or the baby's. But underneath the medical precautions, something else was happening. Dominic's business dealings, usually kept carefully separate from home, began bleeding into our life with increasing frequency. Cars I didn't recognize appeared in the driveway at odd hours. Anthony and the other security personnel multiplied, their presence no longer subtle. And Dominic grew tense in ways that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. What's going on? I asked one night after a particularly tense phone conversation I'd overheard fragments of. Business complications. Nothing you need to worry about. Dominic, we're having a baby together. I think I'm entitled to worry. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. There's a territory dispute. Another organization trying to move in on routes I've controlled for years. It's being handled. Handled how? Through negotiation. I'm not looking for violence, Hazel. That's never been my way. But the tension didn't ease. If anything, it intensified. More guards appeared. Plans for a family vacation were suddenly made, taking us to a private estate in the mountains where Dominic's security could be more thoroughly controlled. I was 4 months pregnant when everything fell apart. It started with Lily's school. I'd enrolled her in a prestigious private academy near the villa, one where Dominic's name and generous donation had smoothed the application process. She loved it, had made friends, was thriving academically. So when the headmaster called me in for an urgent meeting, I assumed it was something minor, a behavioral issue, or fundraising request. Instead, I found myself sitting across from the headmaster's desk, while she explained with careful professionalism that Lily's safety could no longer be guaranteed at their institution. I don't understand, I said, my hand instinctively moving to my small bump. Has someone threatened her? Not directly, but we've had inquiries about your family, specifically about Lily's routine and schedule. When our security investigated, they discovered the individuals asking questions had connections to organized crime. The room spun. What? Ms. Morrison, I want to be clear that we have no evidence of direct threat to Lily, but given the nature of the inquiries and the school's responsibility to all our students. She trailed off, the implication clear. I made it to the parking lot before I started shaking, calling Dominic with hands that barely held the phone steady. Someone's been asking about Lily. At her school, the headmaster basically expelled her for being a security risk. Where are you? His voice was controlled, deadly calm. School parking lot. Dominic, what's happening? Anthony is 2 minutes away. Get in the car when he arrives. Don't go anywhere else. Don't talk to anyone. I'm handling this. Handling what? Who would target Lily? We'll discuss it when you're home. Please, Hazel. Trust me and get in the car. Anthony arrived as promised, his usually warm demeanor replaced with professional efficiency. The drive home felt endless, my mind spinning with horrible possibilities. Lily was safe at the villa with Maria, had been all morning. But what if she hadn't been? What if something had happened while I was oblivious, focused on prenatal vitamins and nursery planning? Dominic met us in the driveway, pulling me into his arms before I'd fully exited the car. Are you okay? The baby? We're fine physically, but Dominic, someone was asking about Lily. Strangers with crime connections. What aren't you telling me? He guided me inside, not to my suite, but to his private office, a room I'd rarely entered. Once the door was closed, he began to pace, the controlled stillness he usually projected fracturing under stress. The territory dispute I mentioned has escalated. A rival organization, Russian, very aggressive, has decided the best way to force my cooperation is through pressure points. He met my eyes. You and the children are those pressure points. Horror washed over me. They're targeting the kids? Not directly, not yet, but they're sending a message. They know about you, about Lily, about Noah. They know I care about you all, which makes you leverage. Then we go to the police. That's what normal people do when they're threatened. Dominic's laugh was bitter. I'm not normal people, Hazel, and the police can't help with this. Some are on my payroll, yes, but just as many are on theirs. This is something I have to handle through different channels. What channels? What does that mean? He was quiet for a long moment. It means I need to make a deal. Give them some of what they want in exchange for guaranteed safety for my family. What do they want? Routes, access to my distribution networks, a percentage of profits from certain territories. He hesitated. And they want me to participate in shipments I've always refused. Weapons. The word landed like a physical blow. You said you didn't deal in anything harmful. I don't. I never have. Luxury goods, electronics, specialty items with complicated import regulations, but nothing designed to hurt people. Weapons cross a line I've never been willing to cross. Then don't cross it now. It's not that simple. If I refuse, they escalate. They've already demonstrated they know where Lily goes to school. Next, they'll show they know where she plays, where you shop, every vulnerable moment in your day. His voice broke slightly. I can't protect you all the time. None of us can be secure as long as they're actively trying to get to me through you. I sank into one of the leather chairs, trying to process the magnitude of what he was saying. My pregnancy, my daughter, our carefully constructed life, all of it suddenly felt like a house of cards in a strong wind. There has to be another option, I said. Something that doesn't involve you becoming an arms dealer. I've been looking for one, but they're not interested in anything else I can offer. They want the roots, the networks, and they want me complicit in their operations, so I can't expose them without exposing myself. Then we leave. Take the children and disappear. You have resources. We could go somewhere they can't find us. There is nowhere. The certainty in his voice was chilling. These are people with international reach. Running would only delay the inevitable and guarantee we'd be looking over our shoulders forever. So what? You're just going to do what they want. Become what you've always said you weren't. I'm going to keep you safe, whatever that requires. The finality in his voice sparked anger through my fear. Don't make me the excuse for compromising your principles. Don't put that on me or the children. You think I want this? He turned on me, and I saw the anguish beneath his control. You think I don't know exactly what it means to cross this line? But I've lived through loss, Hazel. I've held my dying wife's hand while our son slept unaware. I've felt powerless in the face of forces I couldn't control, and I swore I would never feel that way again. Never let anyone I love be taken from me if there was anything I could do to prevent it. Even if it means selling your soul? Even then. We stared at each other across the elegant office, the gulf between us suddenly vast. I'd known Dominic operated in moral gray areas, had accepted that about him. But this was different. This was active participation in violence, in the very harm he'd claimed to avoid. I need time to think, I said, standing on shaky legs. This is too much to process all at once. Take what time you need. But Hazel, He caught my hand as I moved toward the door. "I understand if you can't accept this choice. I'll still protect you and the children regardless. But I need you to understand I'm not making it lightly." I pulled my hand free, unable to bear his touch in that moment. "I need to check on Lily." The following days were tense, filled with conversations neither of us wanted to have. Dominic arranged for increased security, guards who now shadowed Lily's playdates and my prenatal appointments. The villa that had felt like a sanctuary began to feel like a different kind of prison, one with armed men at every exit. And through it all, I wrestled with an impossible choice. Stay and accept what Dominic was becoming, what our life would mean if he crossed this line. Or leave, try to build something separate, and pray the Russians wouldn't use us as leverage anyway. But as my pregnancy progressed, as I felt life flutter beneath my ribs, I realized leaving wasn't really an option. Not because of Dominic's money or protection, but because despite everything, I loved him. Loved the man who read bedtime stories to Noah and Lily with equal tenderness. Loved the father who'd wept at our first ultrasound, seeing his second child moving on that grainy screen. Loved the complicated man who was trying to navigate impossible choices with no good answers. 3 weeks after that horrible meeting, I found Dominic in his office, staring at documents I couldn't read from the doorway. "I've decided," I said quietly. He looked up, and I saw the fear naked on his face, the terror that I was about to say I was leaving. "I don't like this. I hate what they're forcing you to become. But I understand why you're doing it." I moved closer, settling into the chair across from his desk. "So if you're going to make this deal, we're going to make sure it's the last deal. No more escalation, no more compromises. One agreement that guarantees our safety permanently. Hazel." "I'm not finished. You're also going to start looking for ways out of this life. Because I won't raise our children in this world forever. I can't. If you love me, if you love them, you'll find a way to go legitimate eventually." Hope flickered in his eyes. "You're staying?" "I'm choosing us, all of us together. But on the condition that this is temporary, that you're actively working towards something different." He came around the desk, pulling me to my feet and into his arms with desperate intensity. "I promise. I'll find a way out. It may take time, but I'll do it. Make the deal." I whispered against his chest. "Keep us safe, and then we'll figure out the rest together." His hand settled over my bump, feeling our child move beneath his palm. Together. The deal with the Russians was finalized in a warehouse I never saw, at a meeting I wasn't invited to. Dominic returned home late that night, his face etched with exhaustion and something that might have been shame. He didn't tell me the details, and I didn't ask. Some things were better left unknown. What I did notice was the change in atmosphere. The predatory tension that had gripped our household for weeks dissipated like morning fog. The extra security remained, but grew less visible, blending into the background again. Lily returned to school at a different academy, one with even more stringent safety measures. And life resumed a semblance of normalcy, if you could call our gilded existence normal. My pregnancy progressed smoothly despite the stress. At 6 months, Dr. Seta Martinez confirmed what we'd suspected during the anatomy scan. Another boy. Dominic's reaction was complicated, joy tinged with grief as he processed having a second son when he'd barely survived losing Sophia while having the first. "Noah will have a brother," I said, watching him study the ultrasound image with intense focus. "They'll have each other. Like you and Lily have each other," he murmured. "Family." The word had become important to both of us, a talisman against the darkness that sometimes threatened to swallow our happiness. We were building a family from broken pieces, 2 people who'd lost too much finding something new together. Elena organized a baby shower that felt more like a society event. with women I barely knew presenting gifts expensive enough to stock 3 nurseries. But Maria brought a hand-knitted blanket, soft yellow with white stars, that meant more than all the designer items combined. And Lily, with 4-year-old solemnity, presented a drawing she'd made of our family. Dominic, me with my round belly, her, Noah, and a small figure labeled baby brother. "I'm going to teach him everything," she announced, like how to tie shoes and what foods taste good and how to be brave at the doctor. Watching her with Noah, seeing how gentle she was with his toddler chaos, filled me with hope. Maybe we could make this work. Maybe the sins of Dominic's business wouldn't touch these children we were raising with such care. I should have known better. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unseasonably warm for late November. I'd taken both children to the park, one of our regular outings now that Lily's school let out early, and Noah needed the sensory stimulation. Anthony accompanied us as always, maintaining discreet distance while we played. Lily was on the swings, pumping her legs with determination, while Noah toddled after birds with the single-minded focus of a 1-year-old. I sat on a bench, my hand resting on my now prominent belly, enjoying the normalcy of the scene. Other mothers and nannies chatted nearby. The sound of children's laughter filled the air. For a moment, I could pretend we were just another family enjoying a beautiful day. The first indication something was wrong came from Anthony. His casual posture shifted, became alert. He moved closer to where I sat, his hand inside his jacket in a gesture I'd learned meant he was reaching for his weapon. "Mrs. Castellano," he said quietly. We'd dropped the pretense of him using my maiden name months ago. "Please gather the children. We need to leave." "What's wrong?" But I was already standing, calling to Lily. "Just a precaution. Come with me now, please." Lily ran over, sensing the urgency in my tone. I scooped up Noah, who protested at having his bird chase interrupted, and followed Anthony toward the parking lot. The Mercedes was there, engine already running. Dominic's doing, I realized, having drivers ready for quick exits. We were 10 feet from the car when the black van screeched to a halt in front of us. Doors slid open, revealing 3 men who moved with practiced efficiency. Anthony had his weapon out instantly, pushing me and the children behind him. "Get in the car," he shouted, opening fire. I ran. Lily's hand clutched in mine, Noah screaming in my arms. Behind us, the sound of gunfire was deafening. Other park visitors scattered, screaming. I made it to the Mercedes, threw open the door, shoved Lily inside. A hand grabbed my shoulder, yanking me backward. Noah flew from my arms, and I heard Lily scream. I fought with desperate strength, kicking, clawing, but there were too many hands, too many attackers. Someone hit me, hard, and the world tilted. When my vision cleared, I was on the ground. The Mercedes was gone, speeding away with Lily inside, and the black van's doors were closing with Noah visible through the window, his small face red with tears, reaching for me. "No!" I tried to stand, to run after them, but pain lanced through my abdomen, sharp and terrifying. "Noah!" The van peeled away. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Anthony speaking urgently into his phone. Then he was beside me, his hand coming away bloody when he touched my head. "Don't move. Ambulance is coming." "They took Noah," I gasped. Lily's safe. Driver got her away." "But Noah." His expression was grim. "They got Noah." The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics swarmed around me, checking vitals, asking questions I couldn't focus enough to answer. All I could think about was Noah's face, his small hands reaching for me through the van window. They took my son. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what I already knew. I'd suffered a head laceration and would have a spectacular bruise, but the baby seemed unaffected by the trauma. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation, monitor for any signs of early labor or placental abruption. Dominic appeared within an hour, his face a mask of controlled fury. Lily clung to him, crying, and I saw scratches on his neck where she'd buried her face. Hazel, he crossed to me, one hand cupping my face, while the other remained wrapped around Lily. Are you hurt? The baby? We're okay, but Noah. I know. Something terrible burned in his eyes. I know. They called. Ransom demand. Then pay it. Whatever they want, pay it. It's not money they want. His voice was hollow. They want me to give up the roots I agreed to share. They want me out of the agreement entirely, and they're using Noah to force it. Horror washed through me. The Russians? But you made a deal. A rival faction. One that wasn't part of the original agreement. He looked away. This is my fault. I should have anticipated they'd try something like this. We can't negotiate with them, Anthony said from the doorway. I hadn't noticed him follow Dominic in. If we give in to this, every enemy will know they can get to us through the children. Then what do we do? I demanded. Let them keep Noah? Of course not. Dominic's hand found mine, squeezed hard. I'm going to get him back, but not through negotiation. The meaning was clear. He intended to take Noah by force, to escalate this into open warfare. More violence, more blood, more chances for Noah to be caught in the crossfire. There has to be another way, I said. There isn't. Not anymore. I looked at Lily, traumatized and clinging to the man she'd come to see as a father figure. At my belly, where our son grew unaware of the chaos his existence had helped create. At Dominic, prepared to burn the world down to recover Noah. And in that moment, I made a choice. What if we went to the police? Real police, not ones on anyone's payroll. FBI maybe. Tell them everything. That's suicide, Anthony said flatly. We'd all go to prison. Better prison than dead. I sat up despite the doctor's earlier instructions to rest. Better alive in prison than Noah dead in a shootout. Dominic, think about this. Really think. Is your freedom worth his life? The question hung in the air. Dominic's face twisted with emotions I couldn't parse, cycling through anger, fear, grief, calculation. Finally, he spoke. If I cooperate with the FBI, if I give them what they need to dismantle these organizations, it could work. But I'd have to give them everything. All my operations, all my connections, everything I've built. Do it. You don't understand. The people I'd be betraying, they don't forgive. We'd never be safe again. We're not safe now. Look at us. I gestured to my hospital bed, to Lily's tear-stained face. They took Noah. They could have killed you, killed me, killed any of us. And they might still. Is this the life you want for our children? Constant fear, constant danger, never knowing if today's the day someone uses them as leverage? He closed his eyes, and I saw the weight of impossible choices bearing down on him. When he opened them again, something had changed. The cold calculation I sometimes saw had been replaced with terrible clarity. Anthony, get me Agent Rodriguez's number, the FBI contact who's been trying to flip me for years. He turned to me. You're right. I can't keep doing this. Not anymore. Not with so much at stake. They'll want everything, Anthony warned. Full cooperation. You'll have to wear a wire, gather evidence, testify. And even then, prison time is likely. I don't care. Get me my son back. That's all that matters now. The following hours blurred together. FBI agents arrived, took statements, began coordinating with local police. Dominic negotiated terms of his cooperation with surprising efficiency, leveraging his knowledge for guarantees of protection and reduced sentencing. Through it all, specialized teams worked to locate Noah, using resources both legal and otherwise. They found him 18 hours after the abduction, hidden in a warehouse on the outskirts of Miami. The FBI raided simultaneously with arrests of the Russian faction's leadership, timing coordinated through Dominic's information. Noah was scared, hungry, but physically unharmed. When they brought him to the hospital, he launched himself at me with such force I nearly fell despite lying down. "Mama," he sobbed, using the word with full awareness for the first time. "Mama, Mama." I held him while Lily pressed against my other side, both children crying while I tried to comfort them through my own tears. Dominic stood at the foot of the bed, watching his son safe again, and I saw the moment the full weight of his choice crashed over him. He'd saved Noah, but in doing so, he destroyed everything else he'd built. The empire, the power, the carefully constructed life. All of it would come crashing down in exchange for his children's safety. It was, I realized, the first purely selfless choice I'd seen him make, and it was the moment I fell in love with him completely, not despite his flaws, but because he'd finally chosen to confront them. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now I keep my end of the deal, help them dismantle everything, and then—" He met my eyes. "Then I probably go to prison for a while, but you and the children will be protected, provided for. The plea agreement guarantees it." "How long?" 3 years, maybe. If I cooperate fully, possibly less with good behavior. 3 years of raising our children without him. 3 years of Noah growing from toddler to little boy without his father present. 3 years of our new baby not knowing Dominic except through visits. But 3 years was better than forever. Better than a funeral or witness protection or a lifetime looking over our shoulders. "We'll wait for you," I said. "All of us. However long it takes." His smile was heartbroken and grateful. "You don't have to. I wouldn't blame you for moving on." "I'm not going anywhere. We're family now. For better or worse." He moved around the bed, careful not to disturb the children, and kissed me with a tenderness that spoke of promises and futures and hope despite everything. When he pulled back, his hand rested over my belly. "Take care of them. Always. And Dominic? Find a way to take care of yourself too. Come back to us." "I will. I promise." The next 3 years unfolded in ways I could never have anticipated. Dominic kept his word, cooperating fully with federal prosecutors. His testimony helped dismantle 3 major criminal organizations operating along the East Coast, earning him consideration for reduced sentencing. Instead of the potential 15 years he'd faced, the final plea agreement resulted in 3 years, 2 of which would be served under house arrest at a property the FBI secured for our use. House arrest meant Dominic was home, present in a way he'd never been even when free. No late-night business calls. No mysterious departures or tense meetings. Just us, the children, and the careful reconstruction of a life built on legitimate foundations. Our second son, Ethan, was born 3 weeks after Dominic's sentencing hearing. I'd gone into labor early, stress and fear triggering contractions that sent us racing to the hospital. Dominic, still technically free pending the start of his house arrest, held my hand through 18 hours of labor, whispering encouragements and promises. "You're doing so well," he murmured as another contraction gripped me. "So strong, just a little longer." When Ethan finally emerged, screaming his indignation at the world, Dominic wept. He held our son with shaking hands, this tiny red-faced creature who represented both redemption and burden. A child who would grow up knowing his father served time, knowing the family's past. "He's perfect," Dominic whispered. "They're all perfect." The house arrest began 2 weeks later. We moved to a smaller property, still comfortable but far from the villa's grandeur. Dominic wore an ankle monitor that allowed him a small radius around the house, but prevented him from leaving the property. FBI agents checked on him randomly, ensuring compliance. "This is strange," he admitted one evening as we sat in the backyard, watching Lily and Noah play while Ethan slept in my arms. "Being home all the time, having nowhere else to be. Do you hate it?" He considered the question. Sometimes, the lack of freedom chafes. But then I look at them. His gaze moved to where Noah was trying to teach Lily some game he'd invented. And I remember why I chose this. They're worth every minute of confinement. The days developed a rhythm. Dominic helped with the children's routines, attended Noah's milestones and Lily's achievements, was present for Ethan's first smile, first roll, first giggle. He cooked meals with an enthusiasm I'd never seen from him before, discovering a talent for Italian cuisine inherited from his grandmother. I had time to learn, he explained, when I complimented his lasagna. No meetings to run to, no empire to maintain, just hours to fill productively. He also used the time to plan our future. With his illegal assets seized, we lived on funds from legitimate investments he'd maintained separately, enough to be comfortable, but nothing like our previous wealth. Dominic began working on a business plan for a security consulting firm, leveraging his knowledge of vulnerabilities and protection without the criminal element. Companies pay well for people who understand how criminals think, he explained, showing me his projections. I can use what I know to help them protect themselves legally, keep us financially stable while doing something that might actually help people. The FBI approved the plan as part of his rehabilitation. By the end of his first year under house arrest, he had 3 corporate clients and was building a legitimate business from our home office. I helped when I could, managing schedules and correspondence while caring for 3 children who somehow managed to be both exhausting and wonderful. Lily thrived in her new school, a smaller academy with strong academics and a focus on arts. She discovered a talent for painting, creating vibrant scenes that teachers praised for their emotional depth. Noah, nearly 3 now, was all energy and curiosity, asking endless questions about everything he encountered. And Ethan, growing from infant to toddler, showed early signs of his father's intensity, focusing on objects and people with laser attention. The hardest part was watching the outside world move on while we remained in limbo. Friends from our previous life disappeared, unwilling to associate with a known criminal. The mothers from Lily's old school avoided me at pickup, as if our past might somehow contaminate their carefully curated existences. Even Elena, who'd stayed in touch initially, eventually stopped calling, her texts becoming more sporadic, until they stopped entirely. "It's just us now," I said one evening after another unreturned message. "Everyone else has moved on." Dominic pulled me close. "We're enough. We have to be." But the isolation weighed on both of us. I'd gone from the villa's social circle to complete solitude except for the children. Dominic, accustomed to power and influence, now spent his days confined to a few thousand square feet of property. The strain showed in small ways: his shorter temper, my occasional tears, the tension that crept into our interactions when we were both exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said after one particularly difficult argument about something trivial. "This isn't the life I promised you. You promised to choose us over everything else. You did that. The rest is just details. Details that matter. You deserve better than being isolated, raising 3 children with a convicted felon. I deserve a partner who puts our family first. Everything else I can handle." 2 years into his sentence, Dominic's lawyer submitted a request for early release based on his cooperation and good behavior. The hearing was scheduled for a Friday in March, with final decision expected within weeks. "What if they say no?" I asked the night before. "Then I serve the remaining year and we move forward. But Hazel?" He turned to face me in bed, his expression serious. "If they approve early release, I want to do this right. I want to marry you. Properly, legally, in front of everyone." We'd never married during his house arrest, an oversight born of chaos and fear. I wore his ring, called myself Mrs. Castellano, raised our children together, but we'd never made it official. "You want a wedding? I want you to be my wife. I want our family legally recognized. I want Noah to know I chose to make you his mother by every definition. I want Ethan to grow up without questions about his parents' commitment. He brushed his thumb across my cheekbone. I want the world to know I love you enough to marry you despite everything I've put you through. Yes, I whispered. Whatever the hearing results, yes. The judge approved his early release 3 weeks later. Dominic would complete his sentence under supervision, wearing the monitor for another 6 months, but free to leave the property for work and family obligations. The news felt like emerging from a long tunnel, seeing sunlight after years of darkness. We planned a small ceremony for a Saturday in June, at the same marina where we'd first met. Just us, the children, a handful of friends we'd maintained contact with, and the ocean as witness. Lily would be our flower girl, Noah the ring bearer, Ethan presumably causing chaos as only a 2-year-old could. The morning of the wedding, I stood in a simple white dress, watching Miami's sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. So much had changed since that night on the yacht, when I'd heard Noah crying and made a choice that would alter everything. Nervous? Maria asked, helping me with my hair. She'd been one of the few who'd stayed in contact, her loyalty unshaken by our family's trials. Terrified, happy, everything at once. That's love, mija, the good kind, the kind worth fighting for. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. Dominic, dressed in a navy suit that reminded me of the one he'd worn when we met, watched me approach with an expression of wonder that made my heart clench. Noah held the rings with solemn concentration, while Lily scattered rose petals with 4-year-old enthusiasm. Ethan, held by Anthony, who'd also remained loyal, babbled a running commentary that made everyone laugh. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promises that acknowledged our complicated past and hopeful future. When the officiant pronounced us married, Dominic kissed me with a tenderness that spoke of gratitude, love, and redemption. The reception was small but joyful. We ate dinner on the yacht's deck, the same space where I'd first held Noah. The children raced around, their laughter carrying across the water, and as the sun set, painting everything in golden light, Dominic pulled me close. "Worth it?" he asked quietly. I looked at our family, at the life we'd built from broken pieces and impossible choices. Every second. Even the hard parts, the prison time, the isolation, the fear. Especially those. They taught us what matters. He pressed a kiss to my temple. "I love you, Mrs. Castellano." "I love you too, now and always." Noah ran over, tugging at Dominic's jacket. "Daddy, Lily says I can't have more cake, but I'm still hungry." "Then we'll get you something else. Come on." He scooped up our son, then extended his free hand to me. Family meeting about the cake situation. I took his hand, calling to Lily and gesturing for Anthony to bring Ethan. Together, our impossible family gathered around the dessert table, arguing good-naturedly about cake and fruit and whether anyone needed more sugar. This was us now. Not perfect, not the fairy tale I'd once imagined, but real and hard-won and ours. A single mother who'd taken a chance on helping a crying baby. A powerful man who'd learned that true strength meant choosing love over empire. 3 children who would grow up knowing that family meant fighting for each other, no matter the cost. We'd survived the worst. Now we faced the future together, ready for whatever came next. And somehow, despite everything, that felt like the happiest ending possible.